The newly refueled USS Abraham Lincoln will be heading to the West Coast, and in its place, the USS John C. Stennis will be heading to Hampton Roads.
At precisely 0647 on a crisp June morning in the North Pacific, the world's most powerful battleship, the USS Abraham Lincoln, sliced through the frigid sea with serene assurance. Over 1,000 feet long, bristling with roughly 90 planes and fueled by twin nuclear reactors, it was a symbol of American supremacy, carrying over 5,000 sailors and the quiet vow that no one would question its control. But when daylight dawned, the unimaginable occurred. Without notice, a covert coalition commanded by Russia unleashed a barrage of stealth missiles and swarms of underwater drones, transforming the sea into a secret warfare. Silent predators moved beneath the placid waves, while lethal drones skimmed the sea at breakneck speed, unseen to radar until the very last second. It was a well-planned, multi-layered ambush intended to overcome even the most advanced naval defenses in the world. At that time, the floating castle became prey. But what occurred next would astound the globe. American steel, technology, and the unwavering determination of its men would reverse the tide in a combat that demonstrated why the United States Navy remained unrivaled on the high seas. Stay with us, because this is how the ambush became a message that the enemy will never forget. The USS Abraham Lincoln cruised with silent authority, surrounded by a fortress of steel and sensors that stretched over 40 nautical miles. On its sides, Aegis-guided cruisers kept steady watch, while Virginia-class submarines patrolled the depths underneath. To any spectator, it appeared untouchable. F-35Cs sat poised on deck, catapults steaming and radars scouring a seemingly pristine sky. But behind that tranquil surface, the first fracture emerged. In the USS John Paul Jones sonar room, a young operator leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. A curious pattern appeared on his screen: weak, orderly contacts traveling at 50 meters deep, too structured to be whales or floating debris. He gulped hard, his voice firm as he reported multiple new contacts bearing 071, range 12,000 yards, depth 50 meters. A cold spread around the operations deck. The task team quietly changed to condition yellow. There were no loud warnings, but the clipped radio calls and pinched expressions alerted every sailor that something had changed. Crews worked quickly, opening weapon systems, securing watertight doors, and ready for the unexpected. Seahawk helicopters burst to life on the Lincoln's deck, preparing to deploy dipping sonars in a race to discover what lay underneath. Within minutes, what began as a handful of dubious interactions had grown into dozens. The displays showed a purposeful formation of autonomous underwater vehicles advancing closer, transforming the massive carrier strike group from hunter to prey. And the sea was only beginning to disclose the ambush that lay under its surface. While the Lincoln's helicopters explored the depths, another threat emerged, this time from above. The USS Shiloh's Spy 1 radar detected fast-moving blips hugging the sea at only 10 meters above the waves and approaching at alarming speeds. These were not ordinary missiles. They were drone-class strike vehicles, skimming the surface at Mach 1.5, twisting erratically to avoid radar locks, and designed to hit with lethal accuracy. Tension rose on the bridge of the Abraham Lincoln as the executive officer held the plotting table. The operator responded with the following: multiple inbound bogies, sea skimming, bearing 082, range 230 kilometers and closing fast. Within seconds, the strike force had advanced to DEFCON 2. The quiet morning turned into a high-stakes search as electronic warfare specialists triggered jammers to thwart approaching drones, and the Lincoln's deckmen protected planes from the mounting threat. Seahawk helicopters continued to search for the undersea swarm, but the skies required quick care. The water, which was once a mirror of tranquility, has now become a trap. The strike group was teeming with defenses. Phalanx CIW's rifles whined incessantly, and electronic countermeasures surged through the air. Above them, the drones resumed their relentless approach, shrouded in radar clutter and preparing to drop for a fatal hit. In minutes, Lincoln's floating castle transformed into a citadel under assault. Besieged by hidden predators below and pursued by kamikaze drones overhead, the ambush had progressed from the shadows to the sunshine, and the U.S. Navy was now struggling for control of the situation. At precisely 0738 hours, the horizon began to move. New heat signatures appeared on U.S. surveillance satellites far beyond the strike group's radars, suggesting another layer of the ambush. Stealth-shaped cruise missiles rushed forward, hugging the ocean's surface and remaining practically undetectable to radar. When the USS Shiloh finally saw them through the commotion, they were already within 180 kilometers and closing at 600 knots. The warning rang across the strike group. Vampires inbound. Vertical launch systems opened across the escorts, and scores of SM-6 interceptors blasted aloft, arcing and diving to meet the sea-skimming missiles front on. The Phalanx CIWS cannons spun with haste, while CRAMs stood ready, sensors fixed on the low-flying danger. As interceptors located their targets, flames flashed over the sky, and little explosions bloomed over the waves, scattering debris and shards into the ocean. However, this was not simply a few missiles. It was a saturation strike designed to overwhelm the U.S. Navy's layered defenses. Some rockets broke through. One exploded near the front starboard catapult, destroying a parked F-35C and scattering smoldering bits across the deck. Another detonated close off the port beam, rupturing a gasoline line and directing flames toward the parked aircraft. Despite the pandemonium, the Lincoln's nuclear engines kept her moving ahead, leaving black smoke behind her. The ambush had resulted in bloodshed, yet the carrier refused to halt, demonstrating that the conflict was far from done. By 0812 hours, the Abraham Lincoln's deck was covered with burned wreckage, but its catapults were still working, and the carrier's nuclear heart remained intact. The command came down with calm resolve. Launch the birds. 2 MQ-25 Stingray drones sped along the deck, soaring into the sky, their wings bulging in the saline breeze. They climbed to 25,000 feet and pushed out over 200 nautical miles, scouring the sea with synthetic aperture radars and infrared sensors and transmitting massive amounts of data back to the Combat Information Center. The concealed opponent then showed itself. Among the dispersed surface junk, a radar silhouette appeared, an elongated figure about 300 feet long that moved slowly and deliberately. Infrared scans revealed strange heat signatures on its deck, much beyond what a cargo vessel would release. This was not a merchant ship. It was a camouflaged mothership, a floating command center that oversaw the drone swarms and underwater predators assaulting the strike force. Lincoln's captain issued the command, "Engage at standoff." Moments later, the USS Mobile Bay's vertical launch cells ruptured, launching naval strike missiles that dropped low to skim the waves toward the objective. Simultaneously, MQ-9B Sea Guardians coordinated from above, locking in the hit. As the mothership scrambled her defenses, firing chaff and flares in desperation, the NSMs avoided and hit amidships with deadly precision. Twin geysers of fire erupted, destroying the mothership's systems and sending flames spiraling over its superstructure. Suddenly, the ocean battle changed. The swarm of UUVs lost cohesion, with some surfacing dead and others circling hopelessly, as Seahawks closed in to finish them off. The screens in the CIC cleared, and for the first time that morning, the sailors on the Lincoln felt the tide changing in their favor. While the surface threats had been destroyed, veteran commanders on board the Abraham Lincoln recognized that the war was far from done. Attacks of this complexity necessitated cooperation beyond a single mothership. Silent predators lingered in the cold, dark depths. Soon after, P-8 Poseidon aircraft flew low over the Pacific, dropping upgraded sonobuoys and installing wide-area acoustic arrays. It wasn't long until faint reactor sounds and hull signatures appeared on the displays. 2 massive nuclear-powered attack submarines were moving just beyond the Lincoln Strike Group's radar net, utilizing modern quieting technologies to hide, but not effectively. Back on board the Poseidons, acoustic operators monitored the sub's whereabouts and depths. Once the locations were secured, the mission commander gave the calm order: launch. 4 Mark 54 lightweight torpedoes glided into the water, slipping beneath the waves with a gentle splash and plunging deep. In desperation, hostile submarines attempted to escape by diving abruptly and dumping countermeasure decoys. However, the Mark 54S were intended for just this situation, responding to false tracks and employing passive bearings to reclaim their victim. Minutes later, a loud rumbling echoed over the water as one torpedo hit the first submarine's stern, spilling its reactor compartment and sending it sliding downhill into the depths. A second explosion occurred soon after, shattering the hull of the second sub under pressure and sealing its fate on the ocean below. Returning to the Lincoln, sonar screens cleared as the final subsurface dangers departed. The sea above seemed tranquil, but underneath, wreckage remained silent, a reminder of the recent covert fight. The Lincoln Strike Group continued on, watchful, demonstrating that even in the face of a contemporary ambush, the United States Navy remained unshaken. By mid-morning, The North Pacific seemed quiet again, its smooth surface concealing the debris of broken submarines, sunken drones, and a blazing mothership far underneath. The USS Abraham Lincoln raced on, smoke stains on her deck but her spirit intact, demonstrating that American resolve is more than just steel and reactors. It is the willingness to adapt and fight back, even when the ambush comes at dawn. What began as a measured strike to test the capabilities of the world's most sophisticated fleet evolved into a conclusive statement. The U.S. Navy used flawless collaboration, superior sensors, and unwavering courage to transform a crafty ambush into a demonstration of its unrivaled strength. But was this truly the end? Or only the first move in a new era of shadow warfare on the high seas? Tell us what you think in the comments. Was this a one-off gambit, or the start of a broader struggle lurking beneath the waves? If you want to see more analysis of current naval battles and secret stories from the world's waters, subscribe and stay tuned. Because out here, the next conflict may start with the first light.